So my husband finally put his foot down and said, enough's enough. He said, I love you, honey, but something's got to happen about this wood pile. It's gotten way out of control. And honestly, he's right. After multiple projects, my wood pile was going crazy. So in this episode today, I'm going to be trying to use up some of the scraps from my wood pile. And I've got 3 awesome high-end trash to treasure thrift flips for you. And the first one is this TV stand. This one was a reject from my recent living room makeover. It's just laminate, not cute. But in order to make this look beautiful, we gotta take it outside. So how many of you have something in your house that looks a little like this? It's a very inexpensive TV stand. It's made out of laminate. You can find them in thrift stores everywhere. But it just so happens to be the perfect size for an entryway bench. Everything about it is perfect except for the way it looks. It looks cheap. It doesn't look high-end. It doesn't look interesting. It is super boring. We're going to start out by sanding with an electric sander just to make this job go a little bit faster. You can sand by hand if you'd like to. We don't need to worry so much about the top because we're going to cover that up. All right, with this all sanded down, all we need to do is wipe it, get it nice and clean with an old rag, and then let it dry. So now it's time to cut down our scrap shiplap, and for that we need to get powerful. Now I don't want you to get nervous because it is my job to help demystify the use of power tools and show you just how usable a miter saw can be. It's not scary, I promise, and it's gonna make your life so much easier. Now if you don't have a miter saw, that's okay. You could do this with a miter box by hand. It will just take you a little bit more time, but you'll get a nice, awesome workout with your arm. Clearly, I'm not working out. So we're gonna measure the distance that we have from the top of the seat to the bottom, and that is 17¾ inch. So we're gonna just go ahead and mark that on our board. And then we're going to cut it. Now I'm going to be using a sliding compound miter saw. Let me show you how we're going to do this. First of all, we need to protect our eyes. You can also protect your ears and your face if you like. I would never discourage anybody from protecting themselves. Just make sure that you're able to still move. These are dirty. We're just doing some simple straight cuts, and the way you turn this on is you put your thumb here, thumb pushes that in, hand pulls this up like so. And that's how you turn it on. It's super easy. So let's do this. So then we take our board, we get it lined up with the edge of our blade. So line it up before we pull the trigger, and we're gonna cut. And it's as simple as that. Now that we have our board cut, we can write PAT on that, and that's just short for pattern. And we can use this one to mark all of our boards. We need a total of 11. Instead of remeasuring every time and maybe the measurements get off, we can just use this one to cut them all with, and that's gonna make our life so much easier. And then cut away, cut, 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 cut. While we are already making cuts, I pull out 3 1x6s from my scrap pile. 3 more pieces of lumber down. Yes! I know my husband will be so thrilled. And we cut it to 59 inches, which is the length of our bench. This is going to sit nice and flush on the top, which is perfect because I have something else planned for along the edge. Now it's time to paint, and I first start by taking some spray primer and priming our bench. We don't need to worry about the top again or the back. I left the back on there primarily just to prevent some overspray. Now, this is literally the only part of the painting process that I would do again. Because in my mind, to save time, I decided to take some black chalkboard paint and spray spray paint the entire bench that way. Boy, was I wrong. Not only was it not a time saver, but it hurt my fingers from holding down the sprayer, and it just wasn't a very great finish, and it just took forever. But I was stubborn and I saw it through to the end. But honestly, hindsight being 2020, I should have just broken out the regular paint or chalk paint and rolled it on. It would have gone on thicker, more evenly, and been just generally faster, which is kind of crazy when you think about this is why I was doing this in the first place. So just learn from that from me to just go ahead and roll it. Now, while that was drying, I took Robin Egg Blue spray paint and sprayed our shiplap. I would do this part again because it worked out just fine. I really thought the color was very pretty. It's going to add such a nice, subtle pop of color to the bench. Now, while that was drying, kind of chain reaction going on here, I went ahead and took some antiquing glaze and antiqued our boards for the top part of the bench. Then we had a whole lot of stuff drying all at the same time. Once the paint was dry, I took a clear coat and sprayed that on as well. Now with our finish done, we can get rid of this. This was just kind of to help protect from a little bit of overspray, and this might be overkill, but how often do you get to use a sledgehammer? So I'm gonna knock this out. Yeah. We flipped this around and we are gonna install our shiplap reverse. I'm gonna start from the center and move out just so that it's even on either side when we're finished. So we're gonna center this. See how perfectly that fits in there? Do one down here. And then I'm gonna be doing most of mine down from the top. We're gonna drive it from the top. These nails are too long. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run them all the way on the top, and then I'm gonna switch out the nails and do shorter ones across. So we switched out to shorter nails, and we're gonna do the bottom, and then we will measure these end pieces. Here we go. Okay, let's talk. I am running out of daylight. This has ended up taking a little longer than I thought it would, but I think in the end it's gonna turn out really amazing. I'm pretty excited. I ran into a couple of issues. There is like on one board where I shot the nails in at the wrong angle and it came through, but in my scrap pile that I am trying to dwindle down, I found some trim, it's usually white, that I spray painted the black and finished, and we are gonna simply just glue that, and it's gonna hide our little oops-a-daisy, so no one will ever know, except for all of you, of course, that I made a boo-boo. I actually had to run to the store because I didn't have the right length nail to nail this down into place. So while I was picking up nails that were just right, I decided to get some of this trim. I think it's mullion, I don't know, I think it's used for door casing. And what I thought we'd do is just finish it out a little bit more and hopefully not add more scraps to our pile. But I figured if we just nailed this into place and then add the same antiquing wax on this, that it would just look beefier and more finished. And then we'll just do some more little finishing touches, and then we'll be wrapping this project up. I'm totally obsessed with how this bench makeover looks in the end. It looks so expensive, so nice. This TV stand was totally headed for the thrift store, but with a little bit of creativity, some scraps from my wood pile, and a little bit of elbow grease, we turned this cheap looking TV stand into something that I would be proud to have in my entryway, and I love it. It's really cute, but what do you think? My next treasure project is a shadow box. It was a simple plain shadow box. I picked it up a long time ago for $2.99, and I've had plans to do something with it for like ever. And now is the time. And what we're gonna do here is we are gonna take some more of that shiplap that we used on the bench and just kind of fill it in the back to kind of give it a little bit more texture and dimension. So I simply line up my shadow box over the top of the shiplap and trace the inside so I know where to make my cuts. I make my cuts on my miter saw. And since it's a compound sliding miter saw, that means it gives it a little bit more length that it can cut. And so I cut it on that because it was a really nice precise cut, and then I can flip it around and cut the other side, and that makes it really easy, a lot simpler than pulling out a circular saw and trying to keep it straight, clamping it down. So using my miter saw in this situation made it really quick and easy work. And then I just took my nail gun and kind of nailed it in the top and on the bottom. I didn't do it on the sides just because I didn't want to see the nail holes on the side, and I figured it was sturdy enough doing it on the top and the bottom. And then I decided it needed a little frame, and I had some leftover molding from our bench, and so I took some of that and created a simple miter frame around the front of the shadow box. Then it was time to take it back inside, where we caulked all of the seams, and that would just make it so you don't see the gaps, and it also adds a little bit more stability to the piece. And then also all of those nail holes and everything, we filled those in with some putty and we let that dry. Then we painted the whole box on the outside in a black chalk paint. Now, I actually really loved that kind of aqua color, and it kind of matched some of my other pieces, but I decided to go with the black only because of the location of where I was going to be putting it. I have two places where I think that this would work, and in both places that robin eggs blue wouldn't work, so I was kind of sad to see that go because I really did like that color. But I was really happy with the black chalk paint, and then of course we painted out the middle, just the white. And look how cute this looks, all put together. It really elevated a simple box that was kind of boring, kind of bland, and now it's just been lifted up a little bit, and all because of some scrap wood that my husband is super happy is no longer outside. I just love how this turned out. We've got $3 to $4 into this, and it looks amazing. I love it, but what do you think? If you're finding value in this episode, I'd really appreciate it if you smash that like button, and if you haven't already, so you don't miss out on some future episodes, such as a huge bathroom renovation that I'm going to be doing here in the next little bit, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'd love to see you around. And our next project for today was some old kind of like faux books that were left here by the previous owner. We bought our home furnished because it was a vacation rental, and these books were kind of included in it. So I didn't really like them at all, and so they've just been kind of hanging out, and I just hadn't gotten around to sending them to the thrift store. And then I just wondered to myself, I wonder if I can make these look a little bit better. I had seen books kind of similar to it on Restoration Hardware, and I kind of decided to try and emulate that look. Kind of keeping with a similar color motif, I decided I was going to paint these books in kind of a greenish blue chalk paint. So I started by taking some painter's tape and protecting the fake pages. Now, we were lucky here because it kind of had this burlap kind of texture to the cover to begin with, so it offered a really awesome texture, and I just painted that out. Then I found a bookend printable off of Pinterest that was free. I just printed out 2 on my home printer, and by the way, I will link where I found this in the description box of the video. Next, I wanted them to look kind of old, so I took some antiquing wax and went over the book print out in that. I had a baby wipe on hand, and I kind of used that to blend it out. I let it dry, and then I simply used the corner of my table to tear off the edges so they had kind of a tattered look to them. I tore them at different sizes because I had a large book and a smaller book. Then I crumpled them up, and then I smoothed them back out. Finally, I took a brown Sharpie and went around the edges to add just a little bit more distress and aging. It was finally time to remove our painter's tape, and then I simply hot glued the antique labels, the fake antique labels. And to finish it off, I just took some jute twine and tied all the books together. So this was something that I was just gonna toss and send off to the thrift store, but I took another look at it, gave it new life, and I'm so glad. And it now is featured in my living room. I get to look at it. It's beautiful. It's not anything that I'm embarrassed of or ashamed of. In fact, quite the opposite. I love the way it looks, and I hope you do too. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If so, here's another one that I think you'll like as well. And to all of my DIY Niners, I just want to remind you that you are more powerful than you know. We'll see you next time. Bye.